Hi, this is exciting, isn't it? Yeah, you may have guessed this, but I've not always been a farmer. I don't know about your childhood heroes were, but Bob Geldof, Spider-Man. Well, mine was... Oh, what's he doing now? Mine was this guy. This is John Seymour. And when I was about 10, I found his book and I soon knew his words off by heart. And I got on with trying to do what he tells you to do in the book. So I ploughed the garden and I tried digging a well and I desperately looked for a pig that I could kill. But I lived in a terrace house. And so becoming a farmer was closed off to me. But all this potting in the soil and all that John Seymour philosophy gave me a real love and passion for ecology. And I went off and I became an ecologist. And I did a PhD in marine ecology. And that led me off to make TV programs. And I just love being outside and in nature. And I made programs like Countryfile and Coast and a little bit of Farming Today. And I learned lots about farming within that. And I make up Steve Planet Earth. And then I made a series called Frozen Planet. And that was the big thing that I spent 8 years working on. And when I made that, I realized just what a mess we've made of the world. But I also came to realize that I was rubbish at working in an office. And that much as I loved spending 10 months a year living on a beach 500 miles away from anyone else, it was never going to be very good for domestic bliss. It was amazing for adventure, you know, but it did, all that adventure kind of just made me want to come home and to build a nest and to have babies and to come back to being a farmer and to and becoming more domesticated. But there's a few things about farming, isn't there? So first of all, if you're not already a farmer, it's really hard to get into. Well, I thought so. And then you're getting into a job where it's got the highest suicide rate in the world. So you've got a job which used to be the most amazing, noble job, but it's got the highest suicide rate. So these weird things kind of drew me in. And so doing what is fundamentally the most important job in the world is what I wanted to do. And at the same time, I came across this guy, Bill Mollison, and he's an Australian who, to be honest, isn't really a million miles away from John Seymour, in that he's got that ability to step back and look at something and think about what needs to happen and just look a little bit deeper or take a step further back from the situation. And he, together with a guy called David Holgram and thousands of years of Aboriginal wisdom, came up with this thing called permaculture. And it's a mix of permanent and agriculture. And actually there's a really beautiful Welsh version of that now, which is Paramaethu, which I think as a crude translation means like forever nurturing. So that was the approach I wanted to take to farming. But what is permaculture? So it means different things to different people. It's very much not just organic gardening, but it's really looking to nature to see how she does things and to kind of come up with a set of design rules and a framework and a concept, really, to look at ways we can live in regenerative ways. And how would you explain it? Well, I think if you look at a woodland, then a woodland is this mass of life, you know? There's so much cycling of life going on, there's so much building of things, but actually it's got no significant inputs. It's got sunshine and it's got wind and it's got rain and it's got the odd spurt of volcanic ash maybe. And it doesn't really give much out, does it? So it recycles all that and it gives off oxygen. And maybe it gives back water as well. Things like that. And I think humans can learn so much from that. And that's what permaculture is. It's kind of looking at that kind of system and learning how you could take humans and like insert them into into that ecology and to kind of re-recognize that we have to function as part of that ecosystem. And so for us, or for me, I took it as a kind of set of ethics and principles and design concepts to work with. And that's what we use as a kind of base part of our framework here on the farm. And I guess applied at a farm now, it kind of leads you to something called regenerative agriculture. And I think if you think about it, so if I want to be a dairy farmer, you don't really want to look at rotating parlours and NPK application rates. You want to be looking at how those big grassland ecosystems used to function. So look at that kind of rich savanna ecosystem that used to have hundreds of millions of buffalo, on them. And when Westerners first went in there, they say that you could sit there and you could tie a knot in the grass above your horse. And that's what I want for my grassland, I want 4 meters of grass and 6 meters of root and all that topsoil. And we can do amazing things if we get back towards that. So I want fields where I can not find my cows in. So regenerative agriculture, I think one of the big problems is that farmers, well, everyone has come to think that eating is necessarily a ecologically negative act. And people look to reduce the problems of agriculture, don't they? Or they look to increase its sustainability. But is sustainability so good? So if I asked you, how's your relationship with your husband? And you said, sustainable? That's not very good, is it? And I want to be in a relationship that you go, oh my God, it's just getting better and better as the time goes on. And that's what I want my farm to do. And that's what I want all farms to do. And so basically with regenerative agriculture, I guess the definition would be you're building soil and you're producing food. And if you're not producing soil, if you're not building soil, you're degenerative. And we can't be doing that anymore. So imagine a world, just pause for a second, and imagine a world where food was produced in a way that's positive for biodiversity, for soil and greenhouse gases. And imagine a world where there's loads of healthy outdoor jobs and everybody feels fulfillment, and where we're all eating healthy, nutrient-dense food, which gives us a really healthy population. And imagine a world where it's not, because I know that all sounds really dreamy, but actually it's really not that far away. And so 70% of the world's food still comes from small farms. And even though the Welsh government's own research says that actually there's not a relationship between farm size and farm profitability. And actually what it comes down to is how proactive or how quick a farmer is. It's that attention to detail. And actually that's why I'm a big proponent of small farms, because at big farms it's hard to have that attention to detail, isn't it? And actually, if we're going to farm as an ecosystem, they are complex systems, and humans aren't that good at complex. We're good at complicated, but actually you need that ability to go into detail, and that's what makes good farms. And that's what actually means that small farms on an acre by acre basis can be more productive than big farms. So this is us. 8 years ago, my Jenny, my wife, and I set out to buy a small farm, and we wanted to have babies, and we spent a long time doing that and putting roofs on and kind of homesteading. That kind of self-reliance thing was really important to us. But actually, we spent ages trying to convince someone to lend us the money to buy a farm, and by the time we got there, we realized how important it is to be able to still prove, and this is our mission now, is to prove that you can buy a farm, and through producing real food and selling that food, you can pay a mortgage, that you can build soil, that you can build biodiversity. So you can build ecological capital, but also you can build social capital as well. And then the most important one is that you can do all that and enjoy it. And that's the that's the crux in it, isn't it? Or really. So if you can do all that, to be honest, you can kind of save the world, because why wouldn't everybody do that? So this is what we bought. This is Henband. As you can see, it's super diverse. So it was a quarry up until about 50 years ago. It was quarry, sorry. And they took away a lot of the topsoil on that kind of eastern side of the farm, and they never replaced it. But as a result of that, we've got this undulating little fairyland. We've got a lot of wet willow woodland. We've got a lot of spruce. And then we've got that kind of in-by land around the house, which is what we've been working on, to be honest, mainly so far. We've got lots of big plans. So I don't have a woolly mammoth yet, but I'll work on the nut savanna first. But how do you do that without going bonkers? So when we first came to Henband, I was like, okay, we're going to build this permaculture-inspired farm. And I met a guy called Matt Dunwell, who 15, 20 years previously had kind of been down the same road. And he'd bought this farm down in Forest of Dean. And when he first took it on, the great good of the permaculture world came to the farm. And he actually had Bill Mollison himself came onto the farm, and they ran this permaculture design course. And they all went away again and left him with this blueprint of the farm of everything he was going to do. And this beautiful, interlaced, multi-layered, super functional system. But in trying to bring that into reality, it was too much for him, and it was too much for his relationship, and his relationship broke down. And Ragman's Lane Farm is now amazing again. But actually, it went on a pretty downward spiral, and it took it quite a long time to come to what it is now. But luckily for me, there's this thing called holistic management, and I love it. It's a bit like permaculture with a spreadsheet. And like I was saying before, humans are rubbish at complex systems. We can build rockets, we can build computers. They're complicated, they're not complex. And complex things are economics and ecology and sociology, all those things which, to be honest, we're not really that good at. We're too reductionist. So the basic principles, though, of holistic management is that you sit down, and you as an individual, or you as your family, well, all those things actually, sit down and you think about what you really, really want out of your life. What really matters to you, what makes you happy, what will you look back at the end of your life and be pleased that you did. And then you take that's your context, and then you look at what your resource base is. So you say, actually, these are all the things I've got available to me. I could borrow some money off this auntie, or I could borrow this money from the bank, or I've got this friend up the road that's an expert on this, and actually I could sign up with Farming Connect and speak to this person. Or look at all the different things that you could draw in to help you on that pathway. And who are the decision makers? Who can change that? Who's got veto of what you do? Like your kids are obviously involved, your partner. Who can alter what you can do? And it all sounds a bit guffy again, doesn't it? But imagine if you had a way of making decisions easier, and imagine if you had a way that even 5 or 10% of your decisions brought you much closer to that context, to what you truly want out of life. Wouldn't that be good? It does, however, come with a safety warning that if you go through the book, particularly, the first half of the book is all about decision-making and holistic management and grassland management. And the second half of the book is basically just cows. So there is this kind of assumption that if you sit down and think long and hard enough, your answer will be cows. And I know that's true for some of you. I read it thinking about growing vegetables, and I've now got a field full of cows. Yeah. So where does it take us? Well, as a farm, for an example, our context is we've got an abundant, resilient, and productive farm that feeds and is part of our community. We have healthy, vibrant soil and biodiversity. We have sufficient income and resilient finances. The farm helps people believe in a more beautiful world, and that world's worth working for, and that we support and encourage others on that path. And that we've got a diversity of visitors to the farm, and that the farm is valued by them in their lives. And I think if we can do that, nailed it. So we've been busy doing lots of different things so far. So we got quite into sheep, we got quite into wildflower grassland and meadows, and so we were part of one of the first receptor sites in the Coronation Meadows project. We've been doing lots of sustainable woodland management and people. And actually, I think our best secret weapon at Henban actually is people. And we have lots of people come onto the farm. Yeah. And I used to feel guilty about this, I thought kind of if I come here and I'm going to be a farmer, and farmers produce food, they don't have campsites and they don't do this kind of stuff. But actually, every evening I used to walk down over the hill back to the farm, and there'd be loads of lovely birds in the sky. There'd be the heron going home. There'd be the sunset. But I have to go inside and I have to negotiate kids having a wee before they go to bed. And I've got to send those emails and just life, you know. But now I can do that. And I know that there's some bloke sat at the hill drinking a beer, harvesting that sunset. And I think that's super valuable. And actually, that access to nature can't be undervalued. And imagine if everybody got to hear a dawn chorus once every couple of years. I think the world could be quite different. So we've just got we've got 4 glamping units, and we've got 8 camping pitches. So it's not a big operation, but it definitely helps in loads of ways. And then this year's project, well, obviously COVID came along. And so there's no campers, and it was time anyway, to be honest, to become a real farmer. And so we pushed on. Well, we did it through winter actually anyway. So we set up our agroforestry. We've expanded the beef enterprise quite a lot, mainly because the sheep keep eating the trees. But also we started selling Shetland beef, and it's just amazing meat. And we've upped the number of laying hens. So we've built ourselves a big mobile chicken house that moves up and down the agroforestry lanes. That's amazing. The eggs are brilliant. The impact on the land is amazing. Like actually that chicken house goes through, and I don't know, 3-4 days, maybe a week later, that grass just starts to bloom. Really good for that. And we've been set up the market garden. And I'm going to show you a little video about the agroforestry, and I'm going to show you a little video about the garden. And I'm just going to, how on earth do I do that? So, wait on. Yeah, so here it goes. I'm Matt Swarbrick, and I'm lucky enough to be a farmer in Northwest Wales, between the sea and the mountains. And we're trying to prove that you can buy a small farm, that you can make it pay through producing food, but also you can build social capital by bringing people onto the farm, and also build biodiversity and soil at the same time. I think if we can do all those things, then the future of small farming is super exciting. If you think of a farmer's job is to turn sunshine into food, and looking around our farm, one of the most productive spaces we have are those edge of woodland. So that woodland's just kind of fallen into the pasture. And so what I wanted to do was to maximise that all across the farm. It's kind of bringing in lots of this edge effect. And so what we've done over winter is we've divided up all our main pasture, the pasture around the house, into 30 individual day-sized grazing units. And we've done this using keyline design. We've done this essentially on north-south rows, so we still get maximum light penetration. And we've done it, been really careful to leave lots of space still for big machines and tractors and stuff to come through. And so it's not lost the ground, we've just added to it. On our poorer land, so on our north-facing land, we've put in
alder, willow, bird cherry, hazel, things that are good for animals to browse, things that are quite fast growing, things that are quite cheap to plant. And then on our better land, we put in lots of top fruit. So we put in apple and plum and cherry, mainly apple. And then we've also put in there lots of currants and gooseberries and elderflower and sea buckthorn, lots of other things actually. And we've also put lots of support species in. So we've got plants that are mining down for minerals, we've got plants that are fixing nitrogen, and we've got things that are bringing in beneficial insects. It's like a little mini ecosystem, like a linear forest garden running through the farm. Headband's only a small farm, and so to make it pay, what we need is lots of layers of different enterprises. But in order not to go bonkers, those layers have to be quite simple and really efficient. So with the fruit trees, what we've done is we've put in mainly apple, and those apples are all designed, there's only 4 species, and they all ripen at a similar time of year. So we can come in, we can make fruit juice, and within a few weeks, we can be done with that enterprise. And also helps other projects. So actually now we've got the tree lanes, we can move the sheep and the cattle every day around the farm, and it only takes maybe, well, a few minutes really to move that livestock every day. So it's really good for pasture management as well. So financially, we've kept it super simple. So we've divided up probably most of this pasture for about £4,000. It's just semi-permanent electric fencing. It's really cheap to do. And what I'm hoping is in probably about 4 or 5 years' time, we'll start getting that income back every year on that. So we'll make more money with the fruit trees out of these fields than we ever would do with the sheep and the cattle. But then also, we've still got that income from the sheep and the cattle. In fact, we might even get more because we've got all those benefits of shelter and shade and increased moisture retention, and also the diversity that's coming off them eating those browsable tree rows. If you want to do agroforestry yourself, do it. It's really good. Speak to Farming Connect. Can speak to me. I'm one of their mentors. But I think it's a super thing to be doing.
There we go. And if you've got patience, there's a little video I'm going to show you now about the market garden. And then after that, we'll have a little bit of a summary and do some questions.
We want to be able to produce food without losing soil. And one of the most destructive things currently is cultivation. And so we wanted to be able to create a ecologically rich soil building space where we can produce vegetables. And so the most exciting project this year is our no-dig, tree-enhanced, ecologically rich market garden. So this area used to be pig paddocks, and for like, I don't know, 5, 6 years we've had pigs running around on these spaces. But pigs are quite destructive actually, and they're quite destructive to soil structure. And so although they left a lot of manure behind, they also kind of destroyed that kind of fine porosity that you would need to grow vegetables. Now what we've done is one half of this, we've brought in a big muck spreader, and we filled that with compost and farmyard manure, and we spread over this last summer, and we put a tarp over that and then left it. And then the other half, we still had pigs until this spring. So basically the pigs came out and we came straight in and put the beds in. They're working pretty well. They're not as good as that side where we had that tarp and we pulled the tarp back and we just instantly had this really lovely, rich, worm-filled, mycorrhizal-filled composty soil. So the garden is made up of 100 fixed width, fixed length beds. They're all 70 centimetres wide by 10 metres. And that gives us brilliant uniformity to be able to plan. It gives us brilliant uniformity for moving things between different beds and all sorts of things actually. It's just for us, it's a super good size. And then we've got 100 of those, and then every 10 beds, we've then got a tree row. So we've got a kind of a perennial tree row that divides the garden down, and that's great for stopping the wind running through the site. It's great for bringing in birds and bees and pollinators. And it's also a really good site to have perennials that we're maybe looking after a little bit more. So we've got the agroforestry tree rows on site, but with those, they don't get that much attention. Whereas in here, they've got someone coming past, well, every day, really. And so we're able to look after them in that little bit more detail. And one of the other really good advantages is we're only running the veg box between June and Christmas. And so a lot of the area is tarped over to try and knock that weed back, to try and protect it over the winter. but we'll still have those little bits of life that are all the way through the garden. So we've got somewhere for those little bugs and buggers to go and live. And we've got the wood chip, there's still some living plants. There's keeping that life, keeping the garden alive really through winter. So how's it going? Well, pretty well, really. We're producing food and we're selling that food every week, which is the basic plan, isn't it? We did a really good plan over winter. So we sat down and we really made a pretty sexy spreadsheet, actually, that kind of had a guess at what we'd put in the veg box each week. And it helped us to put in, just to know what we were sowing and when the transplant should go in and when we could expect to harvest and all that kind of stuff. Now, we're not actually brilliant growers, so there's like things were lost in that germination stage, wasn't quite as hot as we wanted, and then the transplants, they didn't take quite as well as we wanted, so we kind of came loosely off plan, but at least we had that good start. And then the big worry now is I kind of made that back in December, and so I thought, well, like August, September, that's miles away, isn't it? But actually, it's now here. And also with COVID, we kind of thought, well, look, campers are never coming back. We're just going to get on and be farmers. But actually campers have come back, and that's made me a little bit distracted. And so I'm a little bit kind of worried that what we've got in the ground now has to last us through to basically the end of the veg box. But I think what we'll do is if we find we get to a point where we're kind of buying in more veg than we're providing from the garden, I think we'll just stop the scheme there and we'll just start again next summer. So pests and weeds, and we set out with this really nice idea. We'd laid all this compost out, we'd laid all this wood chip out, and we kind of thought, look, we'll just have a no-weed garden. Wouldn't that be nice? And wouldn't it be nice? But actually, it's not really worked out that way. And then actually, one thing we're kind of waiting for really is this, because the idea is the garden's a really rich ecology, and with that we've got lots of bugs and the little buggers, and a whole little ecosystem that kind of manages itself. But I think because the soil was really new and really raw, we did have a problem with cabbage root fly. That was our main problem. We lost quite a lot of the early brassicas. But I think as that ecology develops, I think we'll get rid of that problem. So financially, does it work? It's very honest work, isn't it, market garden? It's very much you get out what you put in, I think. And you're possibly lucky if you do that. But it is working. So we've probably spent about £9,000 setting up all the systems. We've put in a polytunnel, we've put in irrigation systems, we've got loads of nets and row covers, tools, all sorts of stuff actually. But I think if it's going to work, it needs to be a super efficient, kind of quite well dialed in system. And that's what we're trying for. Revenue-wise and selling the stuff, so we set it up as a CSA and we've been selling to about 30 boxes a week. That's going really well, actually. And so 30 boxes a week, we're selling June to December. That's £15 a box. That's about £12,000 worth of revenue we get back from that. And then also we're doing a little bit of additional sales to a few cafes and just to campers and other people that come into Little Farm Shop. So let's say we're making £14,000 as a revenue from it. And then within the veg box, though, just to make our life a little bit easier, we are buying in a few of those slightly lower value items. So let's say we're buying £3,000 worth of veg a year just to top that up. So would I recommend setting up a no-dig market garden on your farm? Yeah, you've got to want to do it. It's a lot of work and it's a big learning curve. But then we've added £11,000 to the revenue of the farm from an area which to most farms is pretty insignificant. The best thing is every Thursday morning you go out and you pick a really nice quantity of really beautiful regenerative food, and that's going out to all our neighbours, and that feeling is just magical. So that I'd really sell, and the revenue is obviously a bonus. Whether you want to do it yourself or whether actually that £11,000 is enough to create an employment space for someone else, it's like Handband really works because we stack up loads of different enterprises. We've got lots of things, they've all got to earn £4,000 each, but they've all got to not take over our heads and completely take over. And so this is an interesting one where it does pay someone enough that maybe in the garden next year, so this year the garden's taken up an awful lot of time, but we've been making beds and we've been working out what we're doing. And I think next year, I think maybe if someone knows what they're doing on a 40-hour week, and maybe another 10, 20 hours of our time, or our farm's always got some interns and volunteers, and actually CSA members are also desperate to be involved. So that little bit of extra time from them, I think it's perfectly viable. And then imagine if every farm all had a little market garden that fed its local community. That'd be nice, wouldn't it?
So, if you're still here, thank you for that. So what's next? Well, for us, I think reducing sheep numbers down. So we're going to up the beef and reduce the sheep numbers. We've got a nightmare with those, like I said earlier, with the agroforestry tree rows. Some people do manage it, so it's not that it doesn't, not that it's impossible, but for us, it's a fight that's maybe too hard. There's ways around that. We could put in hard wire stop fencing, but then there's a big financial element to that, and there's a big environmental element as well to that. Cattle, they're perfectly happy to stay on the right side of an electric fence, and so for us, that's probably what we're going to do. The market garden, we didn't use all the available space, and we didn't really know what we were doing. And I think next year we could probably do 50 shares from that space. I think we could find customers for that, in which case the revenue would be much more healthy, and we'll probably get someone else in for that opportunity. And if not, we'll do it anyway, because I have enjoyed it. We're going to choose a better beef breed. We've been doing Shetland cattle, which are amazing. The taste and the marbling and the meat, and that is just phenomenal. And they live off of you, but they take quite a long time to get fat. And so I'm kind of interested in finding a better beef breed, maybe. I'm going to spend more time playing with the kids, and I'm going to expand the agroforestry. I'm super excited about nut trees. I'm really excited about elderberry. Yeah, so that's what I'm up to next. And then local food. It said in the advert for this webinar that we were going to talk about local food. So I'm not going to talk a lot about it. But people do want good food. And I think you've got to have faith that people want good food. And we're a big believer in having 100 customers that we sell a variety of different things to. And obviously we could have 1,000 customers or 10,000 customers that we just sell one thing to, and that's fine, but it's a different business model. And so for us, for the moment, we can find someone that all fits with that same umbrella of customers. And maybe in the future we do nuts, or we do something posh with elderberries or something. Maybe that'll take us outside that zone, but for now, that works quite well. And if you've got that, then actually you don't need certification, because you can build trust. So people want good food. If they come on farm and they see how those chickens live, and they see how vibrant those vegetables are, and they taste them, you don't need certification for that. You just need trust, and you can build trust super easily. And I think I'd have to do something significant to break that trust as well. And we live in one of the poorest, like we're a stone's throw from Penygroes, you know, we're in one of the really poor areas of Wales. It can take time. So we started trying to sell the sheep, the mutton boxes, and that took a few years. And to be honest, I got a little bit fed up for a while of going, oh my God, I'm putting all this effort in and no bugger wants to come and buy my sheep boxes. But actually, and at the time we had probably like 80 ewes. That's now gone, we brought that down quite a lot. And actually now our demand for our meat has gone like quite a long way past our capacity to produce it. So that's super good, but just have faith that it can take time. Facebook's been really good. I'm sure, I wish that wasn't true, but it is. And take your customers with you on a journey, and take other people with you. In regenerative agriculture, I'd love to be one of Wales's worst farmers. And I'd love there to be loads of hen bats in every valley, and that's my mission. So, lessons. I'll start with the question: can you buy a farm? Can you make it pay for itself? Can you build biodiversity? Can you build social capital? It's really clear you can. And if you can, then why aren't other people doing it? And can you enjoy it? Maybe that's why they're not doing it. But I think you can, and I'd love more people to do that, and I'd love to support people on that journey. You can produce a lot from really marginal land. I spent a couple of years previously going around farms around Europe that were doing similar things, and some of those are in really challenging environments that make even like the uplands of Wales, look like a tropical paradise. And so microclimates, permaculture, and working at a small scale gives you that ability to create microclimates and to be able to produce food all over the place. We're a small country, we can move fast, and I think we could do amazing things. Forget trying to be sustainable. Remember that relationship, be holistic, be regenerative. The products of your farm, and I used to think this was guff as well, but the products of your farm is only limited by your imagination and maybe your sanity. And I think I now think that's true. And Bill Mollison said, as the world's problems grow increasingly complex, the solutions remain embarrassingly simple. I think that's bang on. So, any questions? There we go. Thank you, everybody. You're all still here. That's good. Does anybody have any questions?
If you do, just put them into the chat box, the Q&A box if you hover your mouse. We've just got a minute or two if anyone does have any burning questions. Obviously, you can contact Matt or Farming Connect or me. If you don't have anything now, but once we've gone, you think, oh gosh, I wish I'd asked that question.
Yeah, if anybody does want to email me about anything, it's just matt@henbants.org, and I'd love to talk to anybody about anything in this direction.
Well, thanks, Matt. Thanks very much, and I really appreciate all sharing everything that you've done. Actually, it's great to see how much you're doing, and having visited you, I know how much you're doing. Oh, we've got a question from Heather.
Yeah. There we go, Heather. Yeah, so Heather talks about weeds, and they got the better of us and what we're going to do next year. We're going to work really hard, Heather. Actually, what we're going to do is we're going to try and cover over most of the garden over winter again. There's some winter crops, and we've tried to put all the winter crops into certain blocks. But the majority of the garden now, really, as things are starting to come out, we're going to start putting it to bed. And hopefully, and we've got another garden, so we've got the old kitchen garden, so we'll probably start that early for the early season stuff next year again, and we'll try and just hold this garden under silage tarp as long as we can, and that's going to be our main weapon, really. Yeah.
There's another question there, Matt.
Mena just mentions that they use wool as a mulch. Yeah, no, we've actually got, particularly this year, we've got quite a big pile of wool that we're going to be putting, particularly on the tree rows, but it does make a really good mulch. So yeah, good.
I think we'll say thanks very much for now, Matt. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Julian and Chris. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everybody. Thanks very much.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.